It's been a minute. So grab your planner and your beverage and let's reset for August. Summer is drawing to a close. We have 3 more weeks before we start back to school, like 2.5, but who's counting? Who is counting? I want to know who's been put in charge. And I feel like this summer we simultaneously did nothing, but also had the busiest, most stressful summer of our lives. So let's talk about how we spent June and July, because I never got around to making a June video. I always break these videos into sections, like a recap, what I liked as far as movies I saw, books I read, things I tried, and then what my goals are for the upcoming month. I think it's great to plan, and it's also great to be spontaneous, and we have to find a balance of both. So let's rewind in time all the way back to June. So the beginning of June, the first week, my kids had camp at church. I volunteered, my oldest son volunteered, and then my younger 3 kids were in camp. But my youngest, my oldest, and I missed 2 days so that we could take my daughter to the neurologist about seizures. And we learned nothing. We learned nothing. We love the neurologist. It was a great experience. We did have to drive several hours away because the only children's neurologist near us, he doesn't even exclusively see children, sees everybody. And it was not a great situation for us. And so we decided to try this one, and it was like a night and day difference, just a wealth of knowledge. He gave us so much great information. He watched the videos we have and said, I see what you're seeing. We need to do some more tests. Unfortunately, we've had a few emergencies pop up today, and all of the EEG machines are being used. And he apologized because we had driven for 4 hours. And my whole thing is like, listen, we're not here for an emergency. We have the time, we have the resources, we have the finances to make this trip. And this is a mom over here going through a potentially nightmarish situation, and I'm not going to get a bad attitude because I don't want to trade places with her. If my child were on the other end, I would want a stranger praying for me. And that's kind of how I viewed it. Like, I'm going to pray for this mom, and then we can go back to our hotel. Went and toured some local botanical gardens. I took my kids to the bookstore. We went and ate at Cheesecake Factory. Then we went back to our hotel and we watched a movie. And those kids thought it was like the best experience ever. And then the next day we went home and then back to camp. We had a full summer of doing therapy, and at the end of July, my daughter graduated from ABA therapy. That's the therapy that we were going to every single day. So we still have speech, OT, and some other things that we're doing, but we're not going to therapy every single day. And so both my calendar and my wallet are happy, but we had such a wonderful experience. We absolutely adored her therapists. She had a birthday in June, and the therapist decorated the clinic room. They had a piñata, they had a balloon, they had airbrush, or had a professional airbrush artist make her a hat with Hello Kitty and her name on it, and they celebrated her. And at the end of July, when it was our last day, I cried in the car on the way home because it was such a great experience. And I know that ABA can be a controversial therapy. We were so blessed to go to an autism affirming clinic, and everyone who works there has a child on the spectrum. And so it was wonderful because they know as a parent what you need, and they love your kid. And we've seen a lot of improvement. I am nervous. I don't know what the future holds. And that's all I can say about that. July 4th, we hung out with my parents. We hung out with some friends. We did our thing where we watched fireworks in our church parking lot, but they have like a little festival, and so it was nice to see friends and hang out with them. I played bunco at a friend's house. Just trying to think of what else. We had lots of like swim birthday parties and just hangouts, and so it was just a really nice, chill summer. My 13-year-old started a job. Like, dude, slow down. You are a baby. A baby. But a friend of ours runs a day camp, and they asked if he would help with recreation and crafts. And so they would pick him up, take him, and bring him home. He only worked about 10, 15 hours a week, and he's saving up his money so that next summer he can go off to youth camp. And it's just, oh, it's that transition. It's that weird place that I'm in because I have a small child who is entering into kindergarten, and then I have a teenager who's randomly starting a job, and just this like weird in between. And I was talking to one of my close friends, her son is my son's best friend. And we were talking about that, like navigating jobs and relationships. And I said, you know, he just has to come home every day for his nap and his snack because in my mind, he's still a toddler. And she said, oh, I know. Mine's still a toddler too. And I was telling my mom, like next summer, I want to take my younger 3 kids on a trip while my husband and older son go off to camp. And my mom was like, I'm just looking at you thinking, why would I send my 12-year-old off on a trip with 3 children? And I guess like it never goes away of seeing your kids as kids, which makes it quite complicated as your parents age and you step into a different role. Anyway, my life is, nobody warned me. So my fellow elder millennials, how you doing? Also started going to the chiropractor over the summer. I hurt myself. So I hurt myself back in May, not May. I hurt myself like way back when we were on Mardi Gras break. So February, March. And then I got kidney stones and I thought the pain I was having in my lower back was the kidney stones, and then it didn't go away. And I went finally to the chiropractor, and I've never loved the chiropractor because I don't enjoy being touched. But they did an x-ray and my hips were like this. So I've started chiro care and it's really been helpful for me. And then also for my TMJ. So that's been helpful too. And then I started taking my daughter because I figured I had read some really promising studies on chiropractic care for children with autism. And then if this doesn't help, I'll go to physical therapy because I'm a big believer in functional movement and how that healing that can be. But for now, this is working. But one night my mom had all the kids because my nieces were staying with her. And so I went to the chiropractor, then I went to get my nails done. Jason and I went on a date. And when I was getting my nails done, I said, I just want clear on, my fingers and my toes because I don't do acrylics or anything. I just wanted my nails to look nice. Well, he did my nails and then he was doing my feet and he was like, Miss Lydia, I am not putting clear polish on your toes. You need to wear open-toed shoes with beautiful toenails and have your husband take you out for a steak. Jason and I also got to spend a weekend together. My mother-in-law is amazing and she came and got the kids for the weekend. And so we just hung out here. We went to see Jurassic World. It was awful. We knew it would be, but we're like, we got to see all of them. We've also started introducing our older 2 boys to the Jurassic Park franchise. They're 12 and 13. And so they've been staying up late on Saturday night to watch them with us. And it's been so much fun. But it was just great to hang out with Jason. He is my best friend. And it's really great to be married to someone who wants to be around you. Let's talk about things that I watched and books that I read that I did actually like. So first we'll talk about things that I watched. I watched a couple of the train wreck documentaries on Netflix. Have you seen any of those? I was talking to another mom at the therapy clinic about it and she was like, hey, have you watched Trainwreck Poop Cruise? I was like, no, I have not. And she said, you should. It's about, I think, a Carnival cruise that everything broke down while they were at sea and they had to be dragged back. And I knew the story because the harbor that they were hauled back to is in Mobile. It's basically where I live. And there was a long legal dispute between the cruise line and the city. And so that was the perspective that I knew. And I also remember seeing on the local news that once those poor people got dragged back to land in Alabama, they were taken via bus to Texas and the bus broke down. Like these people could not catch a break. But my favorite of the train wreck documentaries, or I should say like the one that resonated the most with me in maybe a traumatic way, was Trainwreck, The Cult of American Apparel. Now, I do recommend it, but with the caveat, it shows American Apparel advertising, which often showed nudity randomly for no reason. But I liked the documentary itself, one of the reasons is because I identified with it. It's all about working at a startup in your 20s and having a lot of high hopes and being taken advantage of. And that was the situation that I found myself in my 20s. I was working for a startup online publication, and it quickly folded because they did not want to pay us. It was poorly managed. And as I was watching it, I was like, I wonder what my old boss is up to. And so I Googled her to find out that she's a high up in a political organization. And I was like, well, I am the type of person who keeps all of her emails, but I'm not a vindictive person. I've matured and moved on. Hopefully she makes better choices too. But if I were a different person, those emails would be going out. So really quickly, I have not watched this documentary series yet, but I saw on Hulu, Disney Plus, that there is a docuseries, it's 5 parts, called Mr. and Mrs. Murder. While I haven't watched it, I did read the book Guilty Creatures, which is nonfiction true crime about 2 couples living in Florida two couples living in Tallahassee, Florida. They went to high school together. They like go off to college together, and then they get married. And then the husband from one couple goes missing while duck hunting. And then this couple gets a divorce. And then the husband from this couple and the wife get married. Oh, but this husband had sold the dead husband an insurance policy. Anyway, 5-part docuseries, Mr. and Mrs. Murder on Hulu. I haven't watched it, but it's based off that book. And I thought the book was phenomenal. And the reason I thought the book was phenomenal, because you do have to be careful with true crime, because this is a real person. But what I thought was phenomenal is that the guy who died, his mom never left the police alone about it. She called the sheriff's department once a week. She was at FSU football games with a picture of her son saying, my son is missing. I believe he has been murdered every football. 20 years that mom did not give up. Okay, let's move on to books I read, because over June and July, it was a lot. All right, so the first book that I read was The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, not to be confused with The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, a book that I also read. But The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle is, what time period would it be set in? Like pre-World War I? Post-World War I? I couldn't tell. In England at a wealthy home where there's a murder. It's also like an episode of Black Mirror, because there's a person, the narrator, who jumps from body to body to body. And so you see the murder from lots of different angles, but you get there before it's happened. It was weird. I liked it, but it wasn't like it was over and I was like, oh, that was entertaining. And never really thought about it again. I had to go through my list to remember that I had read it. Okay, the second was Run for the Hills by Kevin Wilson. Kevin Wilson is a favorite of mine. I will read anything he writes. He wrote Now Is Not the Time to Panic. Can't remember the other name of the book. Anyway, Run for the Hills is about a woman. Her last name is Hill. And her father left when she was a little girl. And one day in 2007, when she's in her 30s, a man shows up on her doorstep, not her father, but a man claiming to be her brother. And it's like, hey, our dad had children all over the country. Let's go on a road trip and find them. It is poignant. It is at times sad. It is at times hilarious. And I absolutely loved it. So if you're a fan of a family drama that's also comedy, you will enjoy this one. The second book I read was Junie by Erin Crosby Eckstein. And she's from Alabama. Junie takes place in Lowndes County, Alabama. Right before the Civil War starts, Junie is a slave living on a plantation. And her sister has passed away, and then one night the spirit of her sister speaks out to her and gives her information, and Junie has to figure out what to do with this information. I was crying reading the last few chapters of this book. It was like nothing I've ever read before. It was beautiful. It was heartbreaking. It was a shift in perspective for me. And if you were looking for fiction that tells real stories in a real way, Junie is for you. The next book I read, I actually listened to it because it's read by the author, is You Want to Be on Top by Sarah Thorne. So she was a contestant on America's Next Top Model, which is something that I watched like in my teens and early 20s, and hosted by Tyra Banks. And now we know years later, like those contestants were not treated well. And so this is her story, and she doesn't villainize the situation. She's just like, yeah, this is what happened and this is what it led to and this is the story before it. But it was just really fascinating if you are fascinated by how reality shows work, if you like memoirs, if you like to see like the guts of how things are put together. It was a fun read. Next, I read The Sirens by Amelia Hart, and it takes place in Australia. Amelia is an Australian author, and I loved this book. I posted it on Instagram, and a few people asked that the Netflix show Sirens? No, it's about actual sirens, like sea sirens. And it's also kind of a family drama, which family drama is not my genre, but it is sort of a family genre across multiple centuries, sisters. It's about matriarchy. It's about perception. But basically, it opens with a young girl named Lucy, who's about 20 years old, sleepwalking. And when she comes to, she is choking her ex-boyfriend, and you find out that the ex-boyfriend did her wrong. She leaves college, she goes to her sister's house. Her sister isn't there. Where is her sister? And like the family mystery, but also it cuts to the late 1800s. These Irish twins from Ireland. They weren't Irish twins, they were twins from Ireland being put on a ship to go to a prison colony in New South Wales, Australia. And what is their story, and the story of the women on the ship and how they got there and what happened to them before they became prisoners and the mistreatment. And it was phenomenal. I also started the Magic Treehouse series with my younger two. I read it to my older two, and so it just feels like a full circle moment. There's so many books, but every night they get in the bed and we read 1 or 2 chapters, and then the next morning they come bounding in my room. Okay, we're ready for the next chapters. And so it's sweet. I'm going to miss it when the season passes. Here is what I will be reading in August. So the first book is, I've already started this one, The Ministry of Time. I saw this sitting on the counter when I was checking out, and the librarian was like, oh, take it. You're going to love it. I just finished it and I loved it. She said I went in completely blind and it was not what I expected. So I'm a few chapters in. It's about time travel, but so far it's kind of funny. It reminds me of first season of Umbrella Academy. The rest of the series was awful, but the first season, I'd say the first 2 seasons were good. The second 2 seasons were like the worst television I ever experienced. The next book is The Missing Half by Ashley Flowers. I've never read her or anything by her. And I don't know what this is about, but I think it's a mystery. This is not my genre. It's The Night of the Moth, The Night and the Moth, The Night of the K and the Moth. And it's romantasy. What? I'll go check back next month or whenever I get around to making a video, apparently. Okay, so let's talk about August goals. I do not have many. The first one is I'm going to do a staycation with my kids. All the things that we didn't get around to doing, or some of the things that we did that we only got to do once that were fun. So we're going to go to this local pool that was a lot of fun. We went to with some friends. So we're going to go back there. We may go see a movie. We're going to go to the science museum. We're going to go bowling. Just like all the fun summer things that you do that we just didn't have a chance to do. And so we're going to do those the week before we start school. And then we start school. And when we start school, we start everything else. Like, I feel like we just got done because we did. We just got done in July with so many things. And now we're jumping back in. We go back to co-op the end of August. And we're all excited. And then this year, my kids, they all do piano except for the youngest. And then my older two play drums and guitar. And then we're doing karate, like we've done, dance, gymnastics, and horseback riding. That's a lot of activities, I am aware. But this is something that we have chosen to prioritize both time and financially for our children. And so it's worth it. Just gotta stay organized. There is some stuff coming up in September that I will tell you about then, but lots of life. It is beautiful. It is crazy. this is the only one I get. So let's enjoy it, man. So let's wrap up today's video with journal prompts. I always end these videos with 2 to 3 prompts that I find helpful, and hopefully you will too if you are a journaler. And if you're not a journaler, like, maybe become one, because it's great. What is one thing I want to do differently this school year compared to last school year? So last school year was really hard because I was going into the school year just having had major surgery and my daughter's starting daily therapy. And I feel like I spent the entire school year being dragged behind a fast moving train. And at the end of the year, I was talking to other moms in our group, and they were like, yeah, we've all kind of felt that way this year. It was just hard for reasons I don't fully understand still. And so I think this year I want to kind of go back to the basics, to not get so caught up in all the extras. And yes, I realize I'm saying that after telling you all the extracurriculars we're doing. But what I mean by that is not getting so caught up in the like, hey, cool, look over here. Look at what this family's doing. Look at all the amazing stuff they're accomplishing. And instead focus just on the basics of learning and relationship building, both relationships between my children and I and their relationships with other people, because we're getting to the age of like, okay, what do you want to pursue with your life? That's going to come up quicker than we realize. My goal is to give my children the highest quality education possible, but I also need them to learn how to build routines, good routines for themselves, good study habits, good time management. And so I think this year it's really going to be focusing on building those good habits and good routines. This summer looks so different from last summer. How am I accepting beauty in the difference? Like I said, last summer we traveled and it was great and it was amazing. And I almost tried to replicate last summer this summer, and it didn't work out, and I found myself just in a perpetual state of disappointment, which is something I kind of struggle with, and I have to talk myself through it and kind of talk myself out of it. And the simplicity of what we did do was still great. It's still great, and we probably would have missed it had we been super focused on traveling or moving from one thing to another. Yesterday we went to the beach, and it was kind of a last minute beach trip to the National Seashore in Florida. I had a week pass, and the water was like I had never seen it before. It was so calm, crystal clear, beautiful. As my second grader said, it looked like what comes out of the faucet. It was just clear, beautiful water. We saw all sorts of sea life just swimming around. We just sat and listened to the ocean. We found shells. We watched crabs. We just hung out. And it was so funny. We were next to these people who had a speaker going, and they were listening to the Wicked soundtrack. And as soon as Elphaba was like, and if you care to find me, there was a crane, and the crane took off flying, and it was everyone on the beach who witnessed it was dying. Also slowing down to just be like, hey, do you want to come over? Can you send a kid over to hang out? Do you want one of your kids to come hang out? Just being home to facilitate those things as my kids get older. I have been very resistant them getting older to the changing in motherhood, but accepting that each season of life and each season of the calendar year, while it may not be your favorite, is beautiful in its own way, and we can learn from it. Okay, so what are your answers to any of these journal prompts? What have you been reading this summer? What have you been enjoying? Let's catch up. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you soon.